Good morning, this is Cadet Justice Kellett. Tomorrow marks the 20th anniversary of the attacks on September 11th. Please stand silently for a moment of reflection and respect. Many of us were not born when this horrific attack took place, but our parents will always remember that day. Please join me in a moment of silence for those innocent men, women, and children who lost their lives on an airplane, at the World Trade Center, at the Pentagon, and on the streets of New York. For civil servants, firefighters, police officers, and military personnel who have dedicated and lost their lives protecting our safety, our freedom, and our democracy. For the thousands of families and friends who still grieve their losses. Thank you. While tomorrow marks one of the most difficult events in American history, I'd like to be able to take a moment and celebrate America's resilience, ability to work together, help one another, and commit to respecting all, no matter race, culture, or creed. Let's reflect about what's best about America today.
I was a middle school principal, and I remember watching that after the first plane had hit the towers and the second one hit, and we saw the reality of what was going on, and obviously it was shock, and then there was fear. No matter where we were at in this country, I think we felt that fear that this might be more, and how do we respond to what's next?
I was in 5th grade at Gretna Middle School. We were just sitting in class, and I can remember that they explained kind of the story to us and what was going on and how it was unsure, and we were unsure, and I can just remember it was a weird feeling. They wheeled in the big TVs, and back then they were on the TV carts, and we watched the news. It was quiet. It was very quiet the rest of the day. I remember my parents, they hugged me tight. I didn't really know what was going on, but I kind of understood a little bit.
I was a freshman at UNL, and it was pretty devastating. I remember thinking, geez, is this really happening? Is that real? Am I watching a TV show? But it was even more real when the second plane hit. And so I watched the second plane hit, immediately started to think if I had any relatives that were in that area, and I didn't. And then I immediately thought about other people that I knew that had friends there, and we got together. It was an eerie day. It's pretty much everything everybody talked about. Did you see the plane crash? Do you know what's going on now?
I was driving to school, riding in the car with my mom. I was in 5th grade, and I remember hearing on the radio that one of the planes had hit the World Trade Center, and I remember my mom saying, "This isn't an accident," and so I was kind of nervous hearing that. I didn't know exactly what was going on or what the World Trade Center was, but I do remember her feeling a little bit panicked. We didn't have class right away. They rolled in one of those big TVs, and we started watching the news. It definitely impacted me as a child, because I have that vivid memory of seeing it on TV and watching it and seeing the news, and it was a very traumatic experience to see all of those people that were impacted, all the firefighters and police officers that were involved.
I was teaching sophomores at Palo Alto High School in California. I remember we all connected into one classroom and watched the TV in the corner. And I remember Aurora turning to me and saying, "Mr. Hanmer, are those people falling?" And I had to answer, "I think so." But I couldn't answer positive because I couldn't believe it to be true.
Well, I was a police officer at La Vista PD. I was actually running traffic right before school, listening to the radio, go back to the police department and looking at the TV, and all of us are there saying, it's a pretty big hole. Still thinking it's an accident. We're just about to go to our morning briefing, and all of us were walking out, and my lieutenant turned and said, "Hey, there's another plane." And we all turned and see on the TV right when the second plane's going through the day. They shut all of the aircraft down, and the most significant thing I noticed is how quiet it was. I mean, not seeing any planes, and of course, the fear that people had. My brother was supposed to have been on one of those planes. So during that day, we're frantically trying to get a hold of him and not knowing what's going on. And of course, finally my sister-in-law called and said he was out sick. He didn't fly that day, but he lost 2 friends that did fly out that day. I'm on a fire call that day, right about the time that Air Force One was coming in. And you hadn't heard any planes for hours, and all of a sudden you hear the fighters. And
I was in my very first year of teaching. I was a social studies teacher at Omaha Northwest High School. I had taught my first hour. I was in my second hour plan running some errands around the building. We had a common planning area, and there was a TV right over the door. So I walked in from my errands, and I see a whole bunch of people just standing there, mouths open, staring up over my shoulder. So I immediately turned around and did the same thing, and jaw dropped. Principal comes on. Dr. Narad says, "Social studies teachers, turn your televisions on. This is something we should be following." Turn the TV on, take an attendance, and one of the kids goes, "Huh," and we all turned and looked, and we watched the second plane hit together. And I think there was probably just 10 minutes of us in total silence. We got news that the Pentagon had been hit. Go on into 4th hour, and they're still looking. They thought they were looking for 3 planes, 4 planes, then it got down to the 1. And then we heard that it had probably crashed. And then all the flights were grounded. And it was such a beautiful day. The same clear blue sky that they had in New York that day. And it was so quiet. I mean, Offutt always has the planes going, and we're in Epley's flight path, and it was just quiet.
I was a teacher at Papillion La Vista High School, and it started a nice normal day. I remember we had a student council meeting, and then I was teaching English 11. They were showing footage up on the TV in the teacher's lounge, and I remember going back to the classroom and telling my co-teacher, something's going on. I just saw a plane hit a building in New York City. It was, a time of terror and uneasiness and lots of wondering what's going on for our country. I remember having students who didn't know if their family was okay, who have people who are in the military or people that live and work in New York City.
I was the planetarium director at King Science Center in North Omaha, and I was a specialist, so I didn't have any children that day. But I remember watching the second airplane hit the towers and just thinking, what's going on? I remember going home that night and playing with my son, who was like 2 at the time, on the yard, and there was no sound. There was no airplanes flying over, and I just thought that was creepy as heck. There's no contrails going across, and I just thought that was pretty creepy and weird, and the whole situation was just unreal.
Well, I was a junior in college, so I was home, and my roommates and I gathered around the TV when the first plane hit, and then we all watched the second plane. All of our classes were canceled that day. We sat around with our professor and we just talked about it. It was kind of an intense day.
I was on a field trip and we had heard it. We were on the bus coming back and we had heard about the towers, and I remember going home that day and it was all over the news, and I just remember you can't really comprehend it when you're 6. I remember being really freaked out.
It was a strange, kind of an unsure time.
It's still, hard to believe it's 20 years later, and it's still, remembered like it was yesterday.
It was unbelievable.
We sought to turn the fear to faith, that we would respond in a good way long before the responses started to happen.
Kind of the world came together after that. So it was scary, and then it was amazing all at the same time.
I remember everybody kind of coming together though. I remember everybody just being as supportive of one another.
I think it's really easy, especially in today's day and age, to take things for granted. It's really easy to get caught up in I deserve this and deserve that, and then you realize that there's people that have really fought for our freedom, to be able to have the opportunities and the life that we have here. And so just to think that there's kids whose parents lost their life that day, or family members or whatever. So it's just always really important to remember that there's people that are sacrificing their life for us, to be grateful for that and be grateful for that every day that we can move around and live and be our own person.
Everyone was ready to leave at the end of the school day and go hug their loved ones. Not all parents got to come home to their kids on that day.